to moderator for today's session. Welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for joining our webinar today. I would like to offer a special welcome to our Canadian guest today, Marie-Christine Verland, who is the Business Developer Director at Photonics, etc., and Velko Solov, pardon my pronunciation, Director General Advanced Electronics and Photonics at the National Research Council. Today we will discuss the landscape of the photonics industry in the Northeast United States and Canada, and featuring speakers from Foresight and Technology, Aaron Chokla and Edwin Case. For today's outline, I will say a few words about the photonics industry in the Netherlands and what is happening there. And then I will, of course, give the floor to Foresight and Technology. We'll give a presentation in about 20-30 minutes to present the results of their market study. And then Marie-Christine will give a short pitch on the Canadian photonics ecosystem, and in particular, what opportunities this offers for cooperation with, in this case, Dutch industry and research organizations. Erik van Oorschot, who is the ecosystem manager at Photon Delta, will give his views on the results of this market study from a Dutch perspective. And then we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, moderated by myself and Eddie Schipper, who is Advisor Optics, Photonics and Quantum at Netherlands Enterprise Agency, or otherwise known as RVO in the Netherlands. If you have any questions during this webinar, we are very, very happy with your questions and your comments, but please type them into the chat window. As you may have seen, you're all muted and you will not have the opportunity to unmute yourself. But I will make sure that that as many of these questions as possible get addressed in the Q&A session. So, starting off with the lay of the land of photonics in the Netherlands, and in particular photonics policy in the Netherlands. Let me start with that. Let me start by a short introduction of myself. I am Take Manning. I am the Counselor for Innovation, Science and Technology at the Dutch Embassy in Washington, D.C. And with my team, with the Innovation Attaché team, we aim at promoting research collaboration, R&D collaboration between Dutch and, in this case, American and Canadian partners. If I look at the Netherlands, we, as a country, aim to accelerate the application of photonics, quantum, and nanotechnologies to solve societal problems, societal challenges, and of course to create new businesses. These are rapidly expanding sectors in the Netherlands, as well as in the US and Canada. And we already see a lot of interaction between the two ecosystems. We had a big Dutch delegation visit the Canadian pavilion at the last Laser München in April, for instance. There was a recent delegation of Brainport to Waterloo, and vice versa, by the way, with 15 Canadian startups visiting Eindhoven. And last week there was a quantum delegation from Canada visiting Delft and Amsterdam. These are just a few examples of the very tight collaborations that there are ongoing between these two regions. Just a month ago, Photon Delta, as a cross-border ecosystem of photonic chips technologies, has secured a 1.1 billion euro in public-private investment to transform the Netherlands into the leader of the next generation of semiconductors. That is a lot of money, not all of it public money, as I mentioned, but the public funding is quite substantial. It's 470 million euro. obtained through the National Growth Fund, and the rest is a co-investment from a number of public and private partners and stakeholders. This is part of our government's national plan to cement and expand our country's position in these industries, and in particular in integrated photonics. As you well know by now, the Netherlands is considered to be a pioneer in these industries, and in particular the development of photonic chips. And in the past years, we have been able to build a full supply chain that is globally recognized as a hotspot for photonics integration. But of course, the Netherlands is a relatively small country, although we like to call it the smallest of the big countries, and therefore international collaboration in developing these new technologies and new industries is essential. And several of our key players in the ecosystem have expressed a lot of interest for collaboration with Canadian and American market. And that is why we started with a road mapping exercise on photonics. And the aim of this roadmap is to offer a basis to strengthen this international collaboration. One of the milestones in the roadmap report we will be discussing today, and the main objective for this report is to provide an overview of the photonics industry technology landscape, to identify trends, identify stakeholders, key players, funding opportunities, strengths and opportunities in the existing relationship, and to find new partners and collaborations. And of course, I should say, in a stepping stone towards the planned innovation mission later this year. My colleagues Maarten and Sanne will expand, by the way, later on the draft plans for this mission. So, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Foresight Science and Technology. The floor is yours as soon as I can find the right person to unmute. Can you help me? Yeah.
So good morning. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Ed Case, and I'm one of the senior consultants with Foresight Science and Technology. And along with Aaron, authored the report that we're here to discuss today. So if we could, that's university and research centers, business development centers, who some of the small and medium-sized companies might be that would offer partnering opportunities, and then also to look at what the funding opportunities might be within those geographies. In general, we identified trends across a number of the application areas, and our findings were largely that there weren't trends specific to Eastern Canada or to the New England, New York region, that most of the trends tended to be fairly industry-wide without a geographic focus. And then finally, we looked at some of the strengths and gaps for the various regions that we examined in the report. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. So while the focus is somewhat on Canada because of the upcoming trade mission. I do want to talk a little bit about what we found in the Northeast. And in general, what we find is that the photonics industry tends to be fairly concentrated, largely in the Boston area. And then in New York, there's a large amount of activity in Rochester, New York, due to the heritage of some of the optics companies that were there historically, and then some in the Albany area, and to some degree, some stuff from New York City. So those are some of the things that we're gonna look at. Most of the companies that we profiled were, that was largely because we were tasked with looking at smaller and medium-sized companies, and also they may be better partnering opportunities because with their technologies and the capabilities in the Netherlands, there could be kind of a force multiplier by partnering with those companies as opposed to some of the very large companies in those areas. And finally, relative to investment in those geographies, the investment tends to be coming from outside the region. There is some investment community in both Boston and New York City, but as we know with investments in general, it tends to be a global market, and we see a lot of that investment also coming from outside the northeastern United States. We could go to slide 4, and I'll spend the most of the time on slide 4. So again, as we looked at companies and where things were focused geographically, and also using the same criteria of most companies being fewer than 50, we again find that there could be a lot of opportunities for partnering with the companies in these areas. In Ontario, we tended to find that there were a number of companies doing fiber optic sensing and other type of optical sensing, microscopy, and then the photonic integrated circuits. So I think that there's those are some of the areas that were highlighted to us as we were assembling this report. And as I said, they tend to be clustered around Toronto. Representative companies for fiber optic sensing include some of the ones we discovered, like IVG Fiber, Hyperion Sensors, Nicoya Life Sciences, Oz Optics, Sabermetrics, Senstar, and Tornado Spectral Systems. And then some of the companies that are working with PIC technology were Poet Technologies, Ranovis, and Xanadu. So again, that just gives you an overview on the company side. In Quebec, there tends to be 2 areas of focus, geographic areas, around Montreal and around Quebec City. Same criteria as far as the size of companies, slightly different in some of the technologies that are focused on. We see fiber optic sensing and PIC again, but we also see some companies that are doing stuff with laser technologies. Fiber optic companies are represented by organizations like Alizar Technologies, Allied Scientific Pro, FISO Technologies, OE Land, OpSense Solutions, and Rugged Monitoring. PIC companies were 3E8, Eponics, and One Silicon Chip Photonics. So again, as we kind of shift away from the businesses and look at some of the supporting infrastructure, we see that the consortia and industry organizations quite a bit focused around Quebec City, also with fairly large presence in Montreal and in the Toronto area. And we also include the Silicon Epic Fab. It's headquartered in Vancouver, but supports across all of Canada through the universities and some of the research centers. So that gives you an idea of where things are going as far as the supporting infrastructure. And then relative to investment, we find that there's a lot of government investment we see in Canada. And obviously with the seat of government being in Ottawa, there is some focus in Eastern Canada. But in general, any equity funding tends to come from outside the region, in other parts of Canada or from the US and other parts globally. So that's an overview of the business climate in Eastern Canada. And I'm going to turn it over to Aaron now, and he's going to continue and talk about some of the application areas and research capabilities.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it. So as Ed mentioned, his focus was more on the business side, the business consortia and companies, working in the photonics industry. I focused more of my energy on the research institutions, and I think that this is actually a good segue to talk about the application space. Reason being, when you think about applications from an industry and a commercial standpoint, you tend to think of industry verticals like automotive, biophotonics, telecom. Whereas when you think about applications from a research and development standpoint, they tend to be very specific and very focused on, a very targeted aspect of a technology, something very research based, something very fundamental. So I wanted to touch on some of the industry verticals where photonics are seeing a lot of applications. I'm not quite sure what the mix of we have in the audience. I'm sure some of you probably are more familiar with this than I am, so bear with me. But wanted to provide an overview of just a few of the leading areas, some of the key applications, key challenges. So in automotive, for example, I think most people are probably aware that the automotive industry in general is undergoing a period of rapid electrification, and along with that, autonomy, right? So trying to increase the amount of electric vehicles around the road, and along with that, make them self-driving, for example. So along with that, when you think about photonics applications, there's obviously a ton in the area of imaging and sensing just to help with the advanced driver systems and enabling autonomy, and obviously with smart displays as well. And some of the key challenges when you think about automotive, so the automotive industry is obviously a very robust, mature industry. So a lot of the challenges, a lot of the applications, whether they're related to photonics or more broadly in general, the issues tend to be less focused on the fundamentals and more focused on the engineering and the manufacturing, right? So you see things like cost, power consumption, size, robustness, scalability of technologies. Those tend to be the key challenges. Again, they tend to be more related to the manufacturing side of things. When you think about biophotonics, kind of stepping down, actually, let me pause that. So on automotive, that's also kind of a good stand-in for aerospace and defense. So aerospace and defense has a lot of similar applications, instrumentation for imaging and sensing, also high energy lasers. Again, similar challenges related to cost, power consumption, et cetera. But with regards to cost, aerospace and defense tends to be a little bit more capable of absorbing the higher cost of next generation technologies. Biophotonics, this is kind of a catch-all, using light to probe biological systems, pharmaceuticals, things related to medicine, or even in the area of the environmental sensing or agricultural sciences. In that space, one of the key application areas that you tend to see over and over is just related to spectroscopy in general. So FTIR, Raman, UV-Vis, things of that nature. We're using a lot of characterization techniques to kind of understand the environment, or in lasers, for dermatology, ophthalmology, photolinear therapy, things of that nature. Key challenges in biophotonics tend to be a little bit more related to the fundamental science, advancing capabilities for combating diseases for one. Optical penetration depth. So there's a big thrust, a lot of interest in imaging, biological imaging in a non-invasive manner. And optical penetration depth is a key challenge, right? You look at your skin and you can't see inside for a reason, right? So that creates challenges for non-invasive imaging. And that's an area of very focused, active interest with regards to photonics. And then molecular probes broadly, just increasing sensitivity, improving point carrier diagnostics and things of that nature. And then the last one, kind of a catch-all for communications, is telecom, just with the rapid expansion of digital infrastructure to support the expansion of things like the Internet of Things, and improving the techniques and the approaches to communication using free space optics and some of these other things that you see listed here. Again, telecom, like automotive, like aerospace and defense, very mature industry. So the challenges, again, are more related to the manufacturing side of things, less so on the fundamental. So key issues there, cost, weight, power consumption, reliability, robustness, and things of that nature. So again, this is meant to be a broad overview. There's obviously a lot of different areas, application space to dig into within these, but we wanted to provide kind of a high level overview. the application space. And this applies broadly, as Ed mentioned, across geographies, across regions. There's no real focus here. So this is kind of industry-wide. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. So with that in mind, we took a look at the research institutions across Canada to kind of understand what research is being done in which areas. As I mentioned kind of at the outset on the previous slide, I had things broken out kind of by industry vertical. When you look at research institutions and you look at what kind of applications that they have, you don't see things like automotive or aerospace and defense, because the research is meant to be more focused on the fundamentals. But what you do see kind of across these spaces is that if you have a research university that's capable of supporting photonics research, then you probably have groups that play in a broad variety of these application areas, right? So I would think when you think about trying to map research and development onto industry activity, integrated photonics is a little bit of a catch-all. So you'll see things in groups that have integrated photonics that are related to aerospace and defense, that are related to automotive industry, that that do sensing and imaging for farming or agricultural applications, things of that nature. I think the exception to that might be quantum and bio. And so quantum tends to be a little bit more specialized. And similarly with biophotonics, it tends to be a little bit more cross-disciplinary. So, not all research institutions will have a strong bio department that can play well and collaborate with the physics and folks who are doing photonics research. But by and large, what you see here is that if you're doing research in photonics, you tend to have groups that are capable across all these areas. This picture here is meant to focus only on Canada. So we looked broadly across Canada, and there are research institutions across the country. But what you'll notice here is that there's a pretty strong concentration of these in Ontario and in Quebec. So with that, we can move to the last slide here. I wanted to highlight a few, as I understand, and Sane will talk a little bit more about the upcoming mission to Canada, but just want to highlight a few of these institutions that are in these regions. I think most, if not all of these would be accessible as part of that mission. But University of Toronto has a strong photonics group. University of Ottawa has the Center for Research in Photonics, and these are active live links that I've provided here. As I understand it, the report and the slides will be shared later, so you can kind of click around and look for opportunities that suit your specific need. University of Waterloo, also very strong in nanotechnology broadly. They're also particularly strong with quantum. They've got a lot of activities related to quantum technologies, quantum photonics. And to that end, they've got a couple different centers, the Quantum Nano Center and the Institute for Quantum Computing, that are both focused on quantum. And then Laval University has the Center for Optics and Photonics and Lasers. One thing that I do want to say is Ed and I have both gone through provided a lot of examples, kind of high level. I understand that the report that we generated will be shared after the webinar, and in that report, we profiled several dozen companies, universities across northeastern US and Canada, and there's a lot more detail in each of those with links to specific research groups and specific research centers at these universities that you can kind of dig into. With that, that's all that I had. We've got contact information here on this last slide. It can be routed through Constantine, who we work with closely at Foresight. But with that, happy to take any questions in the Q&A when we get to that. But otherwise, that's a high-level overview of the report that we did at Foresight.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ed and Aaron, for your presentation. I think it's very clear, and I indeed saw that there are a couple of questions already trickling in, more certainly to follow. But before we get to that, I would like to give the words to Marie-Christine for her overview. I will unmute Marie-Christine in a second, as soon as I can find her. Bear with me just a second.
Maybe you can unmute yourself, Marie-Christine. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, good. So thank you for the kind introduction and thank you for the presentation, Ed and Aaron. I think what I will present is quite following nicely with it. So my name is Marie-Christine Ferland, as I was introduced. I'm an executive board member of Photon Canada, the Canadian Consortium of Photonics. And my day job, my current job, what I do most of the time is working at the Photonics Industry, a Montreal company located in that work on hyperspectral and infrared camera. So you can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, it was already mentioned a lot that there's a lot of university you can work with. So we can go to the other slide. I think it gives you more information towards all. I think what is important to understand is the proportion of photonic industry and where they're located in Canada. Canada is a pretty big country. So Ontario and Quebec account for 35 to 40% of the photonic industry in Canada. There's a little bit in Alberta and British Columbia. So it's mainly east and the rest is a little bit west. We can go to the next slide. I go in more detail on the technology than Ed and Aaron. So you can see here that most of the company go in optoelectronic, PIC, as I mentioned, laser application, optical fiber, of course, biophotonics. You see optical system, optical component and device. So this is mainly what we have to offer by percentage in Canada. And we can go to the other slide. So this is also the application. So sensing, healthcare, manufacturer, communication, defense and security are all strong suit that Canada has to offer. Also, it was mentioned that most of the company in the US are a small entity, meaning below 50 employees, is the same thing that you will see here in Canada. So Quebec and Ontario will have company. Most of the company are SME companies, so less than 50 employees. We can go to the other slide. So what I want here to present is the import and export of Netherlands and Canada. As you see, it's not much. So the meaning of me presenting that is just saying that I think Netherlands is quite a strong country in photonics, and Canada has something to offer, even if it's an industry that is less strong than it could be in the Netherlands. That means that I think we can really strengthen our relationship and really looking forward to increase that. I think there's a lot of room for that. We can go to next slide. Because you chosen to focus on Ontario and Quebec, I will just present a little bit more about the three area that in Quebec we have and are interesting. So you have Quebec, Montreal, and Sherbrooke. This triangle is a 3-hour drive on each side around. So you know a little bit the size of the region. So Sherbrooke is very known for their quantum technology. Quebec is well known. It was mentioned the Université Laval, INO, Expo, ABB, also strong company, and Montreal, where you have Excellitas and IBM and AI development. Also, Montreal is a hotspot for AI. We can go to the other slide. The thing you have to understand is that most of the company in Canada do export. So this is for Quebec company, but it's the same thing. If I have to present the whole Canada, it will be the same thing. A lot of the company invests in R&D, experience growth despite the pandemic. So I think it's working and teaming with SME company could be a strong way to go. And this is what I will recommend to do. You can go to the next slide. This is where I present, I think, opportunities. So I'm coming from the industry, so I've probably everything is driving by money and market. So I did present a few ways that I think could be interesting for a Dutch company to look at. So there's a few programs that if you team with Canadian company, you can get money to do research and partnership with Canada. So the first one is the scientific. So be aware that, no, sorry, IDEAS would be a good way to look at. It's where the Canadian government do funding for different type of innovation project. If you team with a Canadian company, I think it's a great way to team have money in order to do R&D. All the Quebec and Ontario company will also have credit to do R&D, so it will cost them less. So I think it's important that you're aware of that. So teaming with Canadian company could also be a good way. Merck also is a website where all the tender, most of the tender in Canada by government and provincial and federal will be listed. So it could be a great way also to look at what's interesting and where the R&D is going, so you can be more aware when you speak to a Canadian company. So also, I think 3 websites, so Photon Canada, Optonic, the Quebec part of a photonic cluster, Photon Canada for the Canadian part of photonic cluster, and NRC. I think it's 3 great websites that you can look at if you're looking to partner with company and look at different type of company or what's going on in the landscape of a Canadian company. So I think that's about it. I wanted to show, I think the going to partnership of R&D is the way to go to team up with a company where it could be a great way to tackle each market and having money to finance it. So thank you very much. I look forward to answering your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Marie-Christine. Very interesting to hear your comments. Also very many thanks for your overview of the funding opportunities. I saw that Velko also added an extra one in the chat, so please have a look. And just to chip in my 2 cents, from a European perspective, I would like to add that that cooperation with Canada in the R&D spheres is both possible through Horizon Europe and through the Eurostars program. So if you find partners, if you already have partners in Canada, then those are opportunities as well. I would like to move on to Erik van Oorschot, as I said, ecosystem manager at Photon Delta, to give his remarks. And let me see. Erik, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Take, and hello, Sanne. Well, I'm very glad with this market study, because it proves, I think, that there are some mature possibilities already to cooperate with Canada and Photon Delta, because I saw there were many SMEs, smaller than 50 FTEs, and I think that's exactly what fits most with our own supply chain, because of production capabilities we have. We have pure play foundries like Smart Photonics and Lyonics on indium phosphide and silicon nitride platforms. And I think when developing applications, you need to have those kind of pure play foundries available, and they are available in the Netherlands. Next to that, I think it's also very interesting for us to have the testing facilities available, like the PITC and the CITC, which are capable of testing the big developments in SMEs and facilitate them with some testing equipment. So I think that is a really nice fit between the ecosystem in Canada and the ecosystem in the Netherlands. What surprised me was that there are also a lot of universities active in research programs in integrated photonics. That was really a surprise to me. I didn't know that. And I think that also is very interesting for both of us, because I presume that there will come startups out of those programs, spin-offs, and they also have some needs on testing and producing in small volumes their big developments. So there also is a possibility for Canada and the Netherlands to cooperate, I think, on the testing side and also on the small, low volume production side of the pigs. I think this is really a good preparation for the upcoming innovation mission to Canada to explore this report into depth with each other and look into the possibilities to cooperate. And it's also a really nice target that you mentioned, Eurostars and Horizon, because it helps. And as I understand, also in Canada, there are funding programs available to help those to help those corporations start and advance with each other. And what I said already, also, it's very important that we know what kind of companies there are, and I think they are mentioned, as Ed said, in the market study. That really helps us in targeting our efforts on both sides.
Thank you very much, Erik, for your response. And yeah, I think that that is very valuable, of course, for an insight. I would like to move on to the Q&A session. I see that there have been a couple of messages coming in for clarification on funding opportunities. Velco has been very kind to add two of them, Business Development Bank of Canada and NRC IRAP. I think it would be worthwhile to have a look at them, both for European partners or the Dutch partners and for their Canadian counterparts, of course. Moving to the questions, I see a request for clarification on the provenance of the venture capital. I think that is a question for Ed. You said that 10%, so sorry, that's most of the investment in the Boston area comes from outside of the Boston area. But apparently there is a need for clarification. So I wondered if you could tell us more about that.
Sure. So what I said is that, what investment is in the actual geography we studied comes from Boston and New York, but quite a bit does come from outside of those areas. And in photonics, predominantly, it's the technology investors from the Bay Area, so San Francisco and the Southern Bay. So, the 10% of VC in Boston being in deep tech, I don't think necessarily disagrees with that assessment. Just be aware that when you start to talk to companies, even if it's being led by a Boston area company, the whole consortium of investors could be pretty widely geographically dispersed. And the other big cluster of technology investing in the US does come out of the Bay Area.
Thank you for that clarification, Ed. I hope that answers Jorn's question. Another question that we saw pop up is about opportunities for applications of photonics in the agri-food application or sector. Do you see any specific activities in Canada in this area?
So I think there's a number of things that go on with just general sensing technology. One of the companies that's in the report is a company called Sabermetrics, and they're actually using optical sensing to, their product is called Food Safe Analyzer. So they're using imaging technologies to determine if different food products are maintaining their freshness, whether that's in transit or production or in a retail setting. So that's one example, but in general, I didn't find specific companies looking at the agribusiness, but there are a number of companies that do the components that are going to contribute to that industry.
Thank you. Very clear. Are there any other questions that you would like answered?
Can I maybe make a remark? So Eddie Skip.
Sure, Eddie, go ahead.
Agency. So first of all, I want to stress because we heard now a lot about also the integrated photonics. So it's always about photonics. So integrated photonics and photonics, also optics, where we are looking at. If you look into all kind of opportunities. If you look into sensing, what we also noticed, if we get in contact with other countries, that there are sometimes some specific societal challenges, as we call it. So, for example, in an earthquake area, there is a need there for structural health monitoring of buildings. Is there something like that, especially if you're looking to, for example, sensing, which is very specific for Canada, that they are looking for kind of new technologies in some areas?
Thank you, Eddie. May I ask anyone else who has questions to come forward? Because if not, then we will proceed with our program and move on to a short presentation on the mission that we have in mind for later this year. Oh, Marie-Christine. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just want to add something about the agriculture. So there's a lot of agriculture in Canada, you're right. There's a lot of the sensing technology could be, of course, implicated in this field. I have to say that not all crops are equal. So it really depends on which crop you're, not crop are equal. Those systems tend to cost a lot of money. So not every crop will be suited to look into optics and photonics at this point. So I will tend to focus on market is ready for optics and photonics in Canada and elsewhere, where high value crop compared to other type of crop. And in Ontario, also there's a lab. I will try to recall the name and put it in the chat that really focus on agriculture. So I think it's a great way. It's a good thing, but not all market. That's about it.
Thank you, Marie-Christine. And I very much like the notion that not all crops are equal and worthy of attention in the photonics space. Last chance for.
I see a hand from Wouter.
Wouter, you see it?
Wouter Linse, do you have a question? No, I don't think so.
No? Okay, if not, then we will move on to a presentation of on the planned mission. Who can I give the floor to?
Yeah, me first. Hi, my name is Sanne Echte. I'm an innovation attaché in Washington, D.C. We are organizing an innovation mission to Canada later this year. The mission takes place in the first week of November and focuses on professionals working in the field of photonics, both in the industry and knowledge institutes. And among other things, we already discussed that integrated photonics and sensing will get specific attention during this week. We designed a draft program with our partners Photon Delta, Photonics NL, and Brainport Eindhoven. But it's important to mention that while finalizing the program, specific wishes and demands of possible participants will be taken into account as much as possible. So if you decide to sign up for the innovation mission, please also point out what you want to explore within Canada. First of all, it's good to mention the objectives of the mission. The first one is to explore and find potential partners for joint research, development and commercialization of technological innovations. The second one is to intensify cooperation between Canadian and Dutch businesses and knowledge institutes. Maybe you can hit the button. Yes, thank you. Third one, linking tech talent and entrepreneurial talent from Canada and the Netherlands, of course. And the fourth one, and maybe the most important one for all of us, is to find concrete business links. Then a short glimpse of our program, since Canada is huge, and we discussed that there are around 400 companies within Canada working with photonics technology, and 77% of those are located within Ontario and Quebec, and that is why we decided to choose to focus on these two provinces. And since Martin is actually located in Ottawa, I'd like to give the floor to him to tell more about the route we want to take within Canada. So Martin, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sanne. And as people mentioned before, Canada is a huge country. Quebec and Ontario themselves are huge as well, but luckily most of the photonics industry is concentrated in the Quebec City to Toronto corridor. So it is foreseen that we start our mission in Quebec City, where we will partner up with INO, and this is the largest center of expertise in optics and photonics in Canada. So that will be a very nice starting point. Also located in Quebec City is the Centre d'Optique Photonique et Laser. It's a strategic cluster at the University of Laval, where 8 Canadian universities work together in these fields. But it's not all research. We'll also be engaging with companies. We'll be organizing networking and matchmaking events together with Optonique. This is Quebec's photonics cluster, very much comparable with what Photon Delta does in the Netherlands. After Quebec City, we'll move on to Sherbrooke. Like Marie-Christine showed you, this is between Quebec City and Montreal. And the center, C2MI, is located here, the Innovation Collaborative Center. And this is at the heart of all industrial sectors integrating components essential to the use and development of digital technologies. After Sherbrooke, moving on to Montreal, which is the key business center in Quebec. Also, CMC Microsystems is located here. CMC Microsystems is Canada's leading accelerator for hardware research, design, and development. It works together, or brings together, 65 knowledge institutes and over 1,000 companies to design, make, and test micro nanosystem prototypes. So very, very big ecosystem there. After Montreal, moving on to Ottawa, the capital of the country. That's why the headquarters of the National Research Council are here, and also the Canadian Photonics Fabrication Center. This means that there's a lot of spin-offs. There's a lot of businesses around this area, and NRC has kindly offered to host an event where we can bring those R&D and business components together. Photons Canada also located in Ottawa, so we will be able to organize networking events, matchmaking possibilities in Ottawa as well. And we'll finish the trip in Toronto, where we'll invite the University of Waterloo and its Institute for Nanotechnology to share some of their experiences and see if there's any opportunities for collaboration. And like Sanne said before, and this is true for all the cities that we will visit, it is very important that you indicate what you are looking for as a company if you join a mission, because we can tailor make it for your desires and your needs. We already saw the University of Toronto is very big in photonics. Toronto is the venture capital and financial center of Canada, with a lot of industry, with a lot of applications where photonics can be used. So also a lot of opportunities there for finding business partners. So to sum up, most leading Canadian companies and organizations in the field of integrated photonics are concentrated in this area, in this corridor from Quebec City to Toronto. As Marie-Christine showed you, almost 80% of Canadian photonics is in this part of the country. What you can get out of this mission is to find business partners during networking and matchmaking events that we will organize. Also, if you're looking for research and development collaboration, there's going to be ample opportunities to explore that. And there's, of course, also a lot of more technical, in-depth discussions possible during forums and roundtables. And I want to close off this portion of the mission that is so key for us, and I hope for you as well, that it's time to have fun again after 2 years of sitting behind our own desks. It's time to go out there. It's time to meet people. It's time to forge those partnerships in real life. So let's have some fun. And I'd like to give it back to you now, Sanne.
Yeah. Thank you, Maarten. Great overview of the mission, and I would like to stress indeed that it is very much a program that will be tailored to the wishes and needs of the participants. I understand Eddie would like to add something.
Yes, that's exactly what I also wanted to tell, that it's not a fixed program. So we based on the people who want to join, we will tailor the program. That also means that people who would like to join, they can, of course, tell me, for example, and for the Dutch, you can find my address on the website if you want to join. The contact information, but if you have some questions or some special requests, please send them to me, then we can look into that, if we can fit that into the program.
Thank you, Eddie. And the link to the registration page of the Innovation Mission has been shared in the chat as well. There was a question, but I see that it has just been answered regarding the presence of photonics fabs in Canada, and specifically in Ontario and in Quebec. I would like to offer the opportunity for any last questions before we close off. I would like to stress that that our contact details will be available, and we once again will share the slides among the participants.
Yeah, I see one more question. There's one question for clarification, and I'd like to pass on question to Velko, if that's possible. Jorn asks, so the only foundry is the NRC Center, or are there any more centers within Ontario or Quebec? And I also see a raised hand from Kexi. Maybe we can unmute Velko and Kexi.
Velko.
So Teledyne Daltse is running a MEMS foundry in Brumont area close to C2MI. Just to answer the question about other foundries in Canada. And actually on our premises, we have two foundries. One is R&D, the other one is CPFC's small volume manufacturing. So we mostly deal with industrial clients and we have a R&D foundry. Just to clarify the question around foundries. In Edmonton, there is another MEMS foundry called Microline, but it was recently acquired by Teledyne Daltse, so they're both focused on MEMS.
Thank you, Velko. Kaching, can I give you the word?
Sure, certainly. First, I apologize for joining the meeting late because of the previous commitment. I am Kexi Liu. I'm the president-elect, or if you like, the executive director of the Photonics Canada. Like my colleague Mary Christian and Velko mentioned, I'll be welcoming the mission in Ottawa. Probably will join some of the tours, but most importantly, I'll work with Senna, Martin, and everybody from the Dutch mission organizer side to try to make this a pleasant and productive visit. So in addition to the to different tours, we'll plan to have a forum, a little bit more formal panels in Ottawa. If over the course, we'll discuss that, like Kristen mentioned about and Velko mentioned about the different government programs, opportunities. We can do that. The different partnership opportunities, strengths and weakness of each country's photonic industry, and some of the also the other thing is the needs of Dutch companies. We will probably share some of the company directories or at least the capabilities with each other, so you can pick, say, I'd like to meet such a company. We'll I'm thinking, and right now I'm speaking as a personal opinion because I have not been formally into the role, but very much I'm thinking is to approach companies also outside that tour to see if they can make a trip to Ottawa to meet the delegates if they're so interested on both sides, if there's a mutual interest. There are companies that you see, it's a huge country here from BC or Alberta. If they're very interested, if both sides are very interested, we'll see if they can come join us at least in the final stop in Ottawa or Toronto to make that one-on-one meeting possible. So let us know, let the mission organizers know what interest you have, what particular area you would like to contact, to find. We will try to find your partners in Canada, and we will try to strengthen, complement each other's strengths, and to be a winning team, to make it a successful mission. That's generally my comment. Over the course of the next few months, we will be working together with the team here, try to make this a great success. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, and I support. I want to echo your words. The intention is to create new partnerships, and it would be great to be able to get companies from other parts of the country as well as from the cities that we will visit during the mission. That does require active participation and active input from participants and potential participants, so that we can tailor make the program to your wishes and your needs. I see that we are over time, so I'm going to close off this this session by thanking all the speakers and all the contributors, in particular Marie-Christine, Aaron and Ed, but not to forget all the others who have contributed actively with questions and with answers. I hope to see you all during the mission, of course, and look forward to talking to you in the near future. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye-bye.